This is the moment we have all been waiting for. You know that I know that we all know that this is the engine that has made this channel what it is, and this is the project that needs to come back together. I have learned everything I have wanted to learn about this motor. I can rebuild it, I can make every change I've wanted to make, as you saw earlier, but it is finally time to reassemble it and go for 2,000 horsepower. It all starts here. Obviously, this is the billet part of the motor. You can call it a shout out or whatever you want, but thanks to VR1, watch how this half-assembled engine works. All the bearings have just been lubricated with VR1, and you can see them all spinning inside of there. I was making sure that everything's still aligned. You've got the 2 dowel pins locating everything. Why is this so special? This is exactly how it works, as it should. All of the E-shaft pieces that connect it together are not in there. Each of these rotors are not timed, and you can actually take them and hold on to it. VR1 is so good that even 4 chunks of metal that are not actually held to each other are capable of still spinning on the bearings. This is very, very impressive. Everything is aligned. If it wasn't, this one or that one would have held on and caught on the bearing, and you wouldn't be able to spin it so freely by hand. So just testament to how straight the guys in New Zealand aligned it, and of course how well VR1 works in this engine. With all this done, we've got the rotors, we've got the housings. Earlier today, I went through and cleaned up all these housings. These are the original housings that we used in the block before, and we're gonna reuse them. So let's show you what we did to these. Well, you've already seen the intro to the video. This is the sort of preparation that has to happen first. Before anything fun happens, and long before 2,000 horsepower, you have to make sure your used equipment is close enough to new. In this case, I'm showing you guys all of my secrets. This is the aluminum torched inside of the 4-rotor. So you can see 2 things going on here. One is you can see the aluminum all embedded inside the chromium, and you can see that the apex seal looked like it was starting to warp a little bit and allowing the center area to lift a little bit. The aluminum is the main issue. So what I wanted to do is come up with a solution to reuse these, because they're not worn down. They just have a surface layer that needs to be worn off. And I don't feel like letting the engine run for 50,000 miles to do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try this little thing that I just made. I welded and made all this thing work together so that way we've got this wheel of death. It's 180 grit. I know for sure this one, which is also 180 grit, works really well. It's got little flapper discs, but I wanna see if this thing can do the whole housing at once. So what you're gonna see is hopefully all of this aluminum disappear, a lot of the surface burnishing looking color disappear, and then we're left with a very smooth housing. You will still see these lines, these striations in there, but those aren't a big deal, honestly, because they're in the direction of the housing and they're not warped. With that little bit, I just want to take a look and show you guys the little bit of progress that happens very quickly. So you can see most of the aluminum is already gone, and the rest of that is just grease and oil there. I need to figure out somehow of avoiding that with the center area, but that is much smoother already. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit this for another about 5-10 minutes, and I'll show you guys the result of that. Well, that was about 10 minutes on there, and the finish is beautiful. I can tell I didn't take much, if any, of the chrome down. And that's something I wanted to mention to you guys, is that this is chrome. It is an extremely hard surface, but if it does get in the air, it is also something that you don't want in your lungs, just like most of the things that you're doing with engines. But the fact is, it looks this nice, beautiful finish. You can't get your fingernail to feel one bit of this, so it is very nice, ready for reseating of the next apex seals. Some of you might be asking, why did you not do it in the CNC? You saw my Instagram stories about a month back. I have the program, I made it. I did all the calculations for this epitrochoid shape, and so I can tell you exactly where this surface is in 3-dimensional space. The thing is, that chromium I don't want going into the machine and wearing out the machine, so I'm a little hesitant, and that's my bread and butter right now, to start wearing it down with dust from this. So with these out of the way, let's show you some of the other tools that we're going to be using in this install. This is the most professional, I think, install I've ever done. It's most thorough. It's been 3 days in the making. A couple of things that we made custom are like these little bolts here. They're all thread. They're M12 by 1.25, and what their purpose is when we go to build this engine, we have to build it in half and flip it. Last time I used toe straps, and then when I flipped it, I cut them off. It obviously worked really well, but this time we're gonna be a little bit more professional and consistent with how we make the engine. Those threads will go into all of these. These are 16mm stud bolts. All the rest of these are a 1/2 inch or 12mm. I made a couple tools for this special occasion. One of them is my personal favorite, hot off the press. This is my dowel bolt installer. These dowel bolts go through the whole motor at the very end of the process, and they thread into the front of the motor right there. It needs to be screwed in from somewhere else, and that's why I have this side with a flat piece of metal in here. So once it connects and hits onto that flat piece of metal, I can now ratchet this in or attach this to my slide hammer, and now I can either slide them in if I need the slide hammer or pull them out when we're ready to disassemble the engine. This little tool makes all of that way simpler. We are going to be using a Tank Tools 50mm socket, and we're also going to be using a Tank Tools 32mm socket. Those two are necessary for the front and rear bolts of the engine. This engine is not a traditional engine, and so it has a slightly smaller rear main nut. Front is also very random. As I said earlier, we will be using VR1 as the assembly lube. These are all 3/4 inch sockets, so I neck it down to 1/2 inch for my impact. I've got a lot of new sandpaper, 240, 320, so I can do all of this, which is what I'm going to be doing first. I've got all new side seal springs, apex seal springs, baby apex seal springs, all new corner seal springs, all new corner seals themselves for the entire motor. My theory on this is that this engine is the most important one. We're going to be doing the most amount of horsepower out of this one, so I want to make sure that I use all brand new stuff, and then all the other stuff goes and trickles down to all my other engines. It was actually in pretty decent shape, but I figured why not. We're going to be using our torch to extract all the oils and whatnot out of the tapers on the E-shaft. This is like the dream stuff right here. Valvoline's professional brake cleaner. This stuff is very serious. We don't use it for anything other than this. We're going to be using gray RTV for the legs, for the oil legs, partially because it takes about an hour for it to set. We're going to assemble this engine very quickly so that way this stuff doesn't build up, and then as we pack the engine together, it doesn't accordion and do weird stuff. Something I am very excited to try is Hylomar. This isn't an official endorsement or anything for it. I see a lot of people talking about it, so we'll be trying Hylomar. We will still be using Vaseline to pack the rotors, and it's in the freezer right now cooling down, and we'll see how this works for all of the coolant seals, because that might help with how the coolant seals kind of sit and wear. Speaking of coolant seals, coming over here, we've got all of the old seals and all the old parts just in case we need something random. Old oil control rings, which I do have a spare set of the O-rings in there in case we need those. The interesting thing is that I will be replacing some of these oil control rings because the tungsten surface is so abrasive, so much stronger than the cast iron in these, that it wears them down. So the oil control rings are being worn down and filling in the surface of tungsten with iron. So I will replace one or two of these that actually took some serious damage. No blow-by, but that's just the issue there. This is probably my favorite deal. I do order a lot from Adkins. I order a lot from Mazda Tricks, as you can see here. This is more or less a 2-rotor kit. I really don't care about all the other stuff, but I care about the black and the orange coolant seals. But we also need all of these O-rings for this area up here. We're going to be using slightly different dowels on this engine. They're actually from my Corvette C8. This one's a solid 2-piece dowel, so there's 2 of them, one in another. And then the bottom one is 1 solid piece dowel, so they are going to be slightly stronger than the OEM ones. The real strength comes from the dowel bolts on the engine itself, so don't need to worry about that. Again, all my bearings are basically brand new, so no need to replace any of that. We'll go through the journey of packing one rotor, and then we'll kind of fast forward through the other 3. You know, Joel, I'm feeling maybe some disco. No, maybe some lo-fi beats to rebuild rotors too. Yeah, let's do that. I'll rock with that. So this is going to be very hard for you guys to see, but there is a distinct amount, a much thinner section, whereas if I start pushing it in, it wedges. Corner has been worn away. And my thought on that, I don't want that. That's my thought. So I set all those aside and replaced those with brand new ones. What I then did with these, put every single one of them into the same slot and organized them by the longer ones to shorter ones. It really helps for that. And my goal is to try and use the shortest one that's the longest possible. So I'll show you. I'll put this one in here, and you can see it moves around. That's not even, I'm not even going to try that. So unfortunately this is not going to work for that one. So I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, putting it in like this, and that is much more acceptable. We'll see if it's under 4 thousandths.
and it is not. So that's hot dog in a hallway. We'll actually go to one of the tighter ones, second to last, and that one fits much tighter, and it will not let 4 thousandths go by. So we'll try 2500 or 2.5 thousandths, and that's actually too tight, so that's a good problem to have. There we go, that one works. 4 thousandths doesn't, 2.5 thousandths does. So that's what I'm trying to aim for on these rotors. Something I was just telling Joel off camera, especially when you have really loose corner seals, I'll see a lot of people clearance it and then walk away. And the thing is, you want to really clearance it once all of the triangle is in place, because these can actually push them and it kind of wedges it all in together. So you can actually end up screwing up your setup really easily. You don't just go to one and move on. It is nice having all brand new corner seals. The notch that you'll get in the corner seals adds another variable that you just do not want. Okay, so this one's almost perfect for what I want. Okay, so that is my dream setup there. Let's hope that this side's really short. Actually, it is kind of shorter. So we'll go ahead with 4 thousandths. And it does not accept 4 thousandths, but it does accept 2.5. Yeah, so that's good. So then we'll go ahead and check them all again. No 4 thousandths, but 2.5, 2.5. 4 thousandths is just barely, I honestly just went in. Really, we're right at 4 thousandths. That is on the tighter end of what I've ever done, and I'm kind of proud of that. I think I did one engine to 7 thousandths. I do all my other ones to 4 to 6. I see people going tighter and tighter. What I've got here is basically 2.5 thousandths consistently on the first rotor. And so this one, I'm just gonna clean it up a little bit more so everything's all 2.5 thousandths, roughly. There you go, we've got everything all clearanced and set up on this side, except for the oil control rings. What we're gonna do, you've seen me preach about this on the channel over and over again, this rotor is rotor 2, and on a 4-rotor, rotor 2's bearing, if I'm the front of the engine, rotor 2's bearing is here, so the rotor 2 is moving this way, which means that the spiky thing has to point the same way as the way the engine's rotating. So we need things that stick up like this. This is sticking up like that. And so is this one. So all the little notches, the circular notch goes down towards the rotor, the flat notch goes up towards the ring. Just to show you that in action. It's kind of sick. Oil control rings trying to spin with the thing, and look at, boom, it hits that notch. This spring holds it in place so it doesn't spin with the rotors and ultimately wear out the rubber or the Viton or whatever the hell that is. Same thing with this outer one. Goes until the party stops. It's the oil control ring's time to shine. I was a little worried that these were getting eaten alive by the tungsten, and they are. And what you're looking for is, look at the wear differences between those two. You notice how thin and small this one is and how that one's got more exposed? That is showing you exactly what my fear was, is that tungsten does not give a shit, and it's actually eating through the oil control ring. The tungsten is very, very rough. And so what I'm gonna do is avoid using these two for the second. I'm gonna stick with medium or very shallowly used ones. Same thing with these outer ones. It is really nice to have a small tool like this. Boom, comes right out. Same thing with the bigger one. You feel it's a very gratifying experience, to be honest. So I have spares of these. This engine's too new to really worry about that. This one's the fun one to try to put back in because you have to like balance it and like hook it around and then kind of boop. There you go. Notch side down. This one's much easier. Push it in like that and then notch side down. And then we'll go ahead and try to put even force. And what you're really trying to do here is you're actually trying to get the O-ring to seat in and stick to the inside of the rotor. It will fight you at first, but once you get it in there, it kind of it squeezes down there, and then now the O-ring is actually holding it against the spring, and they don't fall out as easy. If they fall out easy, I would definitely consider replacing that O-ring. Honestly, at this point, this really doesn't matter. It's too hot, but it does act like a really fine glue. We are now going to flip. So we're now sitting on the corner and side seals of that side. Rinse and repeat on this side. These oil control rings are going to be the opposite direction, so you can actually count them and go, oh man, I'm missing one of each of these. Put those on there. Same process. We're going to go ahead and put all of the corner seal springs on. And then we'll glue them down with KY jelly. Chamfered side down. Boop this in there. Chamfered side down. Waiting for, yeah, there we go. So this one you can see is a little tight. It's fighting me a little bit. That's perfect to me. I'll let it wear in. Chamfered side down. do a couple of these. Make sure not to put two into one slot. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are already seeing a pattern to this on the channel or on this very video itself. And that's the thing, is that you have to follow the pattern. Sometimes it's hard to do, honestly. The brain's not meant to do that, but be consistent. So there we go there. We'll start with the smallest one and just hope it works. Nope. Nope. Definitely nope. That is the longest one yet. There's a hope. Much tighter. Ooh, that one feels right. That one's meant for that spot. That one actually feels pretty good too. It's not like in the 4000s. Those two are perfect, and then let's hope this one. Okay. Well, on the very last one of this rotor, no, that's a smaller than 4000s. Okay, well, maybe those were the ones that were in this rotor before. So all of these are now done to 3000s, and then we're gonna go ahead and put oil control ring springs on. The rotor is now turning from this face. The rotor's spinning that way, so the points have to be up that way, and they are. Put that one in there, on there. Nice clean setup there. If I was back in Michigan, this would be amazing. And probably glue this thing together. Rotor 2 is officially done. We're gonna go ahead and give you a nice little montage of the other two being done. With all of the rotors packed, that took probably 6 hours. We're gonna go ahead and start building the block. We got all the guys from Patreon watching, all 5 of you, because I decided to do this at 3 in the morning. I apologize. We are going to be using this beautiful set of FD wheels, as well as New Zealand wood. But we're gonna be building the front half of this first, so we're gonna go ahead and take the back half of this off. This is the absolute center of the motor. This is the special part of the motor that really is special to only this one, I think. That is the center bearing. That is, I think, the secret to my sauce. Absolutely 100 billion% make sure that these tapers, when we go to install this, are oil, breath, everything free. I'm gonna go ahead and hit them with acetone now. Fun fact, I actually built this motor once, and then the guy that machines these E-shafts thought I was gonna take a lot longer to do it, and so then he messages me a week later or a couple days later, and he's like, hey, by the way, you better not even think about putting oil or fingerprints on that. And sure enough, I had just molested that with tons of oil and grease. I was like, I'm gonna make sure this thing's lubricated. I had to tear apart the whole motor. This is where, yes, what's up? So we just it up. Take all that off of there. We'll have to remember to do that on the other side on the taper. This is the magical E-shaft ready for the first half of insertion. Here's where it gets hilarious. I'm sure we'll make a professional way of doing this, but I'm actually just going to set the back half, that's where the clutch connects in the back of those splines, set that half of the motor into the Great Abyss. What we need to do is get the bottom iron onto this. Now, I remember what I did the last time. I actually brought the whole thing up a little bit because I couldn't get underneath it. So I put a chunk of wood under here so I could then set the iron here. The way this engine works, man, you could do this backwards really easily. The front of the engine is facing me right now. So this is the front of the engine. I'll have to get the two dowels in here, which is this one down here. This one's the half-length dowel, so we can actually put this wood in the way. And then we're going to also have to have at least 2 bolts go into this, 2 of these. It's going to have to go like this when the engine's half together, and go up and screw in. That'll work. So this is one of the 2 dowels. We're going to use it right here. And then we're going to take the full-length dowel. Whoa, chill, daddy. This is my first time. God, I wouldn't have even told you what color that is. I did not know that Hylamar was blue. Everybody's been talking about it, so it's finally time to use it. Super curious to see if I'll like this or not. It's all cleaned and prepped, ready to go. First thing is seals. So we'll use just a little bit, not that much. I like this way more than my usual. We'll take any housing. We purposely did this so that way every housing worked. We'll use this for the legs. Take this notch on the stock ones towards the intake. It's colder. These don't feel like OEM. I'm not gonna lie. I can see why people like it. It's like sticky, but not. These are for the O-ring up here. And what I'm gonna do, just to balance out the adventure of this engine, I'm gonna use gray silicone up on this pedestal area. This way the engine sees kind of an equal dispersion of something that raises the height. Okay. And it begins. So now we're ready to take the other side of that taper. This is the one that connects to rotor 1. One of the tricks to this is remembering the key for it. As many of you already know, this is a tungsten-based surface. That tungsten is wearing down the oil control rings, and that is actually metal being deposited onto the tungsten because that tungsten is so much stronger and a little bit more coarse. I think a little too abrasive. It's actually kind of hard to build it with these longer dowels. Like the 2 main dowels, those are easier to have when they're short. Just on the lobe there, a little bit on the face of this.
That's not going anywhere.
That better not go anywhere. For the record, I'm not hiding what Apex seals I'm using to say I have a secret. I've got all variety of Apex seals in my different engines, and these are not the ones that were in the engine before. It's just simply my desire to try different ones, and I'm not trying to endorse any because it's very much voodoo witchcraft, even more so than what oil you use, to say, oh, he uses these Apex seals. My goal is to have this engine actually be more on the race side, and race is a shorter life, but stronger reliability with higher power. There we go. Right, so we are about to see just how good this Hylamar is. Joel said that off camera, and that's exactly the case here. Whoa, whoops. Still getting used to it. So I'm gonna do like a couple dots, and it's the outer one I'm really worried about. This goes towards the coolest part of the rotor. Yeah, I don't know what this is. It'd be nice if it was a reusable one. It certainly feels like it's not going anywhere. Yeah, the Hylamar's holding it. There. It looks like I'm squeezing tons out, but I'm just doing those little bits.
Dribble out.
Yeah. Better not have to play the piano on a stock. Oh, I see it. Because I put the Hylamar on the outside ring, it shortened the length of the track. I see what I did. I have to push it all out.
Hylamar is too good.
Yeah. Okay, that is not the way to do it. But that's holding it. We're gonna clean off this taper again. This is the most critical one, and actually if the guys on Patreon, if you guys remember, when I tore apart that engine that second time, this rotor fell right off. This lobe fell right off because I had oiled all of that. Man, with this valving stuff, I don't even think I need the flame. We'll make sure we definitely use the longer one. Yeah, that E-shaft's way too low. Rotor 1's housing. Having these longer dowel bolts and having it all on wood and everything is not ideal. I forgot how long it took and how careful I was when I did this by myself last time. It all was a blur, and I remember why it's a blur. The good stuff, the lobe all done up. Some a little bit here and there. There's tons of airflow if you forget the rotor. This is like operation, but times a billion. Stay. Thank you. Thank you. No. Always the last one. Always the fucking last one. Let's see. Yes. As I just learned, do not do a ring around the rosy. That's actually the wrong way to do it. The Hylamar sits there and does not play nice with the seal. Actually, I feel real confident with the Hylamar versus anything. Yeah, having it upside down and flipping it and all that. When you don't put the Hylamar on the outer rim, it holds it so much better. Grease the wheel of fortune. The first half of the motor. And there was the gear. Wow, okay, that didn't give me much chance. And that is the front half of the engine assembled. This is probably the coolest part for this. Last time I took 2 toe straps. I wrapped the toe straps around this, ratcheted it closed, and then when I flipped it, they were stuck into here, so I just cut them off. But we're gonna be a little bit more crafty this time. Custom bolts. So I'm threading them into the front iron right now. I'm threading it all the way in until I hit the backstop of the front iron. Same thing on this side. So Isaiah just showed up at the perfect time. This is what I get for live streaming. We're gonna tighten these 2 all-thread bolts down, not fully. I wanna crush it and then let it go when we flip it. So we'll tighten it down just enough so we know nothing's gonna pop out. Oh yeah, you can see some of the Hylamar coming out. Tighten the other side before I get too crazy with that. Isaiah doesn't know it, but he showed up for the perfect time. This is the flip.
I did that once and ended up in the hospital. My piercing caught on her piercing, and it wasn't good.
What we have to watch out for is there's one full-length dowel and then the E-shaft, and so we're going to kind of pick it up.
It's not as heavy as the RX-8 motor, right?
No, it isn't, because it's billet. Pick it up. So the engine is kind of set halfway.
Hylamar just does Hylamar. It's like, it's not silicone, but it's not like a sealing thing. It's perfect. Not for use on coolant seals.
Speaking of coolant seals, while he's reading the instructions, we're cracking open another cold one with the boys. Hopefully that was good. I trust the Hylamar a little bit more than I should. Some of the hardest math for me is looking at the lobe and figuring out which way the rotor is supposed to be. Carry the 30 degrees. See, like I had it completely wrong. Action now. I don't care if it crushes my hand. I said that too soon. There we go. This is the beginning of the last rotor. It's hard to think that this is halfway done with a 6-rotor though.
Damn.
Yeah, I just wanted to shit on myself.
When is 6-rotor content coming, sir?
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the Discord, I'm a snitch. I wouldn't have known. Apparently, I'm just gonna have to subscribe to Patreon whenever this thing's not put together, so that way I know when you're gonna put it together.
We are ready for the final lobe. Both sides of the taper are done. We have the keyway in there, and rotor 4 lobe is on. I'm going to dedicate this shot of me using Valvoline yet again for prepping this to the man whose name looks like a form of artificial sugar, xylitol. You always give me shit, and I know you're going to watch this because you already posted it in Facebook, but I appreciate that. And yet again, we're going to use the good stuff to assemble the engine. Each of us have to push one down for good luck. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes. No way. No way.
finished last.
No, all 3 went in. I know for most people that's like, okay, cool, that's what's supposed to do, but that was sick. Here comes my favorite fucking part of this motor. I make this clear every time. These are a New Zealand thing. I'm sure there's guys in Australia and Puerto Rico. Before you guys yell at me, this came from overseas and it is badass. So huge credit to the guys that made these. I know this is beautiful fabrication and all that. This is the thing I made today. It's a nut welded to a flat piece of chromoly and then 2 more nuts welded to that. When you do this, it hits the backstop, and so it protects the threads while we go and do this. Funny enough, this is the same thread as the thread on these.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My goal is to just gently get the next one in. Yeah, this definitely protects all the threads. There we are. That is like the dream thumbnail right there. You have a 4-rotor billet, clearly capable of all the power that we've put down already, but even more so now. This motor is just about ready to rock. Isaiah scraped the rest of my RTV off because it took a little bit longer to do that than I thought. And so we're gonna go ahead and put some more back on and then close this up. But I think we might get a thumbnail real quick. The funny part about sealing this thing so perfectly is that this is a dry sump motor. So this is all under vacuum. And the problem with that is I realized when I sealed it perfectly, it caused the oil pump, the belt, to snap more because it was scavenging like crazy. Here's the very back of the motor. I want to point out that not only the 7 dowel studs the core of this motor, but these are also 12mm bolts, and they're also doing their fair share of the haul. You can actually see where they're machined to fit as well. They're not press fit like the other ones, but they still definitely carry a fair share of the load. They're like 20 thousandths off. We won't go any further than that. It is torque wrench time, and this engine is so gratifying to torque down because it moves so much. I do this in kind of a 3-step process just because of how much the engine is moving as it's compressing. So I do actually do this in a star pattern, not Mazda's official one. I just do it logically and then kind of releases all the tension inside of there, or creates more tension. Whatever the case is, it settles beautifully. This is how far that motor sank on the first torque down to just 10 foot-pounds of torque. That's how much the engine moved, even though it might not be completely visible. That was a lot of work. I'm very, very, very happy with how this has turned out. Nothing wrong, everything went smooth to plan. We even used Hylamar, so you can see blue kind of seeping out of this, a little different. I am going to put on the rear bearing.
Does anyone remember when the rear bearing came just like this and we never noticed it?
Oh yeah, the rear bearing when we first got the motor came with just 2 of these and then no seal on the inside. We were wondering why the engine up on a stand was just pouring oil out of the back. So this is our best 4 a.m. solution right now. This is a horrible idea. I'm actually putting my foot behind the leg. Let's spin it. Terrifying. Okay, we'll stop there. Look at that. As you can imagine, look at this. There is no end play right now.
That's weird, Rock. Why?
I'm glad you asked, Isaiah. I don't know. We'll just put a skim layer, I think, because there's no ring on this. This could mess up the rear bearing, but we did it last time. Truly just fill in the cracks or divots in the metal. Surprisingly enough, you do not crank down bearings on this engine. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the front side. This is the very important part to doing all of this. Now, of course, you've seen in all the other videos all the in-play talk, but in this case, this needs to be hammered down. I don't even need these bearings at the moment, but I need to put this on and get the whole thing crushed down. Otherwise, we got no motor, Ted. I'm only doing this because these are coming back off. Just the fear of that rear Torrington bearing falling off scares me. Now this has a bearing in the front of it, and that bearing in that front cover is wonderful, but that seizes the whole thing up, so you can't actually measure end play with that. This is just simply to pull the whole E-shaft together. As you saw, the E-shaft does not move right now. We have no end play. We'll keep track of how far this actually goes over. We're gonna get big Bertha. So this is to torque the front lobe to the second lobe to the main E-shaft, and we'll see how much this moves. That was quite a bit. Yeah, there we go. Finally, that's how much that E-shaft was out. I was like, what the fuck? It pulled back in. It was like pulling it back. I was like, so there is the beautiful generic sound. I hit this with 300 foot-pounds of torque when it was in the car.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. What we'll do is we'll put it on all of these teeth. Seems like such a bad idea, but it is such a good idea because oil pours out of here. Give me more. Remember this bitch problem that we had?
Yeah. We took the channels out twice, right?
Yeah, twice, and it ruined the first clutch. Here we are.
Go.
I have stage fright. That's all she got. Here's our very first test to spin over the engine, and we have to do 3 full cycles to get each rotor's 3 faces.
Faster.
Well, the good news is what you're hearing is all 12 faces all have basically the same sound, which is really good, which means one of them isn't like all of them are just so you really can't tell the difference between all those. So you can hear and see the end play because I didn't put any of the front bearings on, and that's what those front bearings are meant to do. Keep this in the center of that. That is a basically assembled 4-rotor. We are going to do this motor on its side, and with that, we have to be very, very careful. This cannot move forward, otherwise I'll show you what happens. That's what Isaiah almost let happen to his RX-8.
I'm sitting this one out. I'm going to observe.
Bolts back off of the front cover and put that plate on, and then things get scary from there. Kind of wild. This is actually the plate that the whole thing's bouncing back and forth off of. Look at the motor was favoring one side, and you know which side that probably is? It was probably pushing this way with the clutch and the drivetrain and everything. So that means that the inside bearing was pushing it harder. That's my theory anyway. Try it. you hear the beep of the camera and your mouth gets off of that thing, huh? Yeah.
Hey, that's another e-shaft up there. That's cool.
I think we should pull the security camera footage.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Dude, I saw you twisting that wrist.
Yeah, I've been practicing. I know what a man wants.
Have I ever told you the story about how I hate these? I know I don't mention it often enough, but I really do not like these. I do not like Allen head bolts. Some of these holes are holes, some of them are not. So here's where it gets kind of fucky. There it is, guys. That is it. This is the all-wheel drive 4-rotor heart, and it is back. And we're going for the biggest numbers we've ever seen until something crazy happens, because we can rebuild it and we can make it even better. So this is a massive step forward. I know it's been a little bit longer than a lot of people want, but I know that I can remake all of these things 100% here in the shop. This is a huge step forward for us. Give me a little bit, but this is going back into the chassis, and it's gonna be sick.